Control loss of biodiversity. It is important for the survival of our world to control loss of biodiversity. Without it, we would be left with lush green meadows and an abundance of life. Unfortunately, as humans, we often do not think about the importance of biodiversity in our lives until there are consequences, and that's when we realize how much it matters to us. In this blog post, you will learn some ways to help reduce the loss of biodiversity by controlling your actions. Control loss of biodiversity by education. It is important for us to control loss of biodiversity by education. We can now better understand the true scope of man's responsibility for biodiversity loss with this new educational initiative. There are many ways that humans contribute to the loss of biodiversity in our world, but one way is by educating people. In addition, proper education can help reduce human population growth rates and consumption levels, which will decrease habitat conversion for agriculture purposes at a faster rate than current trends. There's no shortage of reasons why we need to be aware of preserving biodiversity on this planet, whether it's through conservation efforts or government initiatives like protecting endangered species from extinction. However, there may not necessarily be enough time before things hit an irreversible point with all these critically diverse environments collapsing around us due to pollution and climate change. So what else should we do? Education could prove itself as another viable solution if done correctly. Proper schooling might help lower birth rates among developing countries. Control loss of biodiversity by controlling population. There are many ways to control loss of biodiversity, but one way is by controlling the population. Biodiversity loss happens when populations grow too rapidly or decrease due to natural disasters such as climate change, pandemics like H1N1 influenza A virus, swine flu, diseases that kill off certain species, including humans themselves. But even if these things never happen again, there will still always be some level of risk with any living creature, no matter how small this chance may seem. The extinction of many species is a tragedy, but sometimes the devastation can be prevented by controlling the population. By reducing the number of people in an area or region, whether through birth control techniques and other methods like mass sterilization, biodiversity will increase because there are fewer mouths to consume resources. We think about this issue changes depending on our perspective. As humans with the global impact, it makes sense for us to take some responsibility by limiting family size so that others may thrive while adopting sustainable living practices within their communities. Control loss of biodiversity by restoring habitat. An important way to control loss of biodiversity is by restoring habitat. Have you ever noticed that when we cut down a forest or clear farmland for our use and convenience, it feels like progress? What if I told you this process negatively impacts an ecosystem's health and stability in ways most people never consider? These repercussions are inevitable with every human activity due to how everything interacts together as one system. You can't separate what affects something else without understanding all aspects of their interactions. So let me tell you about how cutting down forests hurts local wildlife populations and humans too. They lose water resources because trees absorb rain into roots which then evaporate back up from leaves during the day. Habitat loss is a major problem. What if we could fix this by restoring it? A long time ago, animal and plant life flourished in the area that now houses our city limits. Our project will restore habitat for animals to return so they can thrive again on their natural turf. Control loss of biodiversity by captive breeding. One of the ways in which we can control loss of biodiversity is through captive breeding. This acts as a form of artificial selection that removes all genetic variation from populations, leading to more severe infertility and vulnerability to disease down the line. The term captive breeding can be used to describe several different practices, including intentionally creating environments where species are unable or unlikely to reproduce and then mating pairs from the same population. Zoos may keep these animals in captivity until it is time for them all, typically males, to leave. Zoos would also take care of releasing some populations into their natural habitat but rely on captive-bred individuals if they need more members. However, captivity puts stress on many animals' life cycles, which could lead to unhealthy offspring and alter an individual's behavior and limit possible genetic diversity, leading to even larger numbers in decline than before due to preying pressures, among other factors. Control loss of biodiversity. Control loss of biodiversity by reversing climate change. Humans are causing a loss of biodiversity by climate change. The Earth is turning into what we would call a human zoo. It's as if the planet were an experiment that humans decided to set up for their amusement, and now they can't figure out how to turn it off. If you take one look at our society, this might not seem like such a bad thing considering the world looks more beautiful than ever. But there is something problematic about wiping out animal species without any moral consideration or consequences from those in power who could make changes on behalf of all life forms other than Homo sapiens. The countries that have the most biodiversity are facing a dire reality. However, it will be possible to save these natural treasures for generations when we reverse climate change. Control loss of biodiversity by construction. Construction causes the loss of biodiversity in many ways, including habitat destruction and fragmentation. Construction also takes away important resources that other species depend on to survive, like water runoff from construction sites or even areas where mature trees provide a shady spot for small mammals and birds during the hot summer months. So the next time you see an area being cleared for new housing development, know what this means. Bulldozers are plowing through healthy ecosystems with no regard because they don't have any way of understanding how much is lost when these habitats disappear forever. A species extinction rate is greatly increased by human construction. The loss of biodiversity due to the destruction and degradation of habitat from human-made structures such as buildings, roads, dams, pipelines, and farms has led scientists to call it the sixth great mass extinction. So we need to control loss of biodiversity by controlling construction activities. Control loss of biodiversity. Control loss of biodiversity by urbanization. One of the natural consequences of urbanization is a loss of biodiversity. Urbanization has been steadily and dramatically increasing around the world. This leads to a decrease in biodiversity or diversity of life on Earth. With more humans moving into cities, fewer plants can grow due to lack of space where they can be properly cared for while still providing shelter from natural predators like insects that may prey upon them without human interference and hunting ground for other animals looking for food sources. The loss is not just confined only being limited within these boundaries but extends beyond because many species depend heavily on certain habitats which now no longer exist since their original home was destroyed by urban development such as forests and wetlands. Therefore, this will affect future generations' succession rights if we keep letting it happen at its current rate.